Hey everyone, how we doing? Hey everyone at Future Proof. Looks like the sun came out at the perfect time to talk about marketing. I am super excited to get into this topic. It is something that I love. It's something that everyone here on this stage loves. So let's just dive right into it, guys. We're going to go down the panel. We're going to view this as if it's a marketing funnel, right? And what do, right? That's right. We start at the top of the funnel. So let's go macro. Let's go really, really broad here. It's 2023, last I checked. What's the number one thing, Sam, we'll start with you, we'll go down the line. What's the number one thing that advisors need to be thinking about when it comes to their marketing efforts this year and potentially in the future?
Okay, you really hyped it up, so I'm going to try and make my answer live up to that energy, but it's kind of a boring answer. I mean, when you think about it, digital marketing has made advertising to a super targeted audience really scalable and affordable for business owners and advisors. But the other thing that it's done has made it super trackable. So what I would say that the number one thing that advisors should be keeping in mind about their marketing in 2023 is to lean into that analytics. So when you're thinking about your KPIs, you should think about it like a funnel. So at the very top, when your goals are brand awareness, the key performance indicators you should be looking at are things like your social media followers, your impressions, your frequency, how much is your name getting out there in front of that right audience. Right. And then as you move down the funnel, looking at consideration, it's really important to look at your email list, the clicks to your website, time on site, the quality of traffic, conversions on that gated content. And then down at the bottom, that's obviously the focus of everything. So your appointment set, your converted clients, using a really solid CRM can make all of that trackable, and then it can inform your efforts moving forward.
Right. So in case you can't tell, the internet side of things rules, right?
Absolutely.
And what's so great about the internet is you can track everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So get very familiar with Google Analytics.
Yep. Right. Social media analytics.
Right.
Your email, your CRM. There's a ton of different ways you can do it, but the important thing is that you find a system that's working together, and it can get really overwhelming, right? Like there's a lot of numbers out there, so being really clear on what the goals of each campaign and each effort is, and then assigning those KPIs and measuring and optimizing over time.
Guys, I cannot tell you, for all the advisors out there that might feel overwhelmed by just how much there is to do when it comes to marketing, just knowing how many people come to your website, like after you post a piece of content, that one thing right there will get you going. It'll get you going into learning that. Well, we got the CMO of the year, was it?
Yeah.
The head marketer?
Yes.
Top dog. Congratulations on the award.
Thank you.
That's massive.
I appreciate it.
I would love to hear
no pressure.
No pressure. For Mercer, tell me, what's that number one thing that you guys are focusing on or you think your advisor network needs to focus on?
Sure. So I'm going to kind of build on what Sam was saying a little bit. I think, there's not a lot of time left in 2023, right? And so the first thing I would do is really think about what is the goal? What is your results? Because without that, a plan without a goal without a plan is just a dream, right? So, what are you actually trying to do? How are you going to measure success? And then I would think about who is your target market that you're going to actually approach to try and hit your goals. The internet is wide, right? And you have 35-year-olds, and you have 55-year-olds, and 75-year-olds, and who do you actually want to hit?
There's 75-year-olds on the internet?
My parents are on the internet.
Oh,
there sure are.
God.
Give those guys more credit.
They're on it.
They are on the internet. Yes, for sure. I know that for a fact.
Love it.
So, and then you think about your target market, right? Which is, do you want clients that look like the clients you have? Do you want to expand your client network? What do you want to do? Because ultimately, the marketing that you do is going to be targeted to the right group of people. And then you think about what are the tactics I can use. There's certainly all the digital tactics that Sam talked about, but there's direct mail, there's radio, there are seminars, there's all sorts of things you can do. But if you have the goal in mind, if you know what the number you want to hit, then you can create a plan to actually go and try and do it. But then the other thing is, don't let perfection stand in the way of progress. Just get out and try to do something. It's okay if it fails. You'll get some learning. I mean, ultimately, that's what we do. We put out a lot of things that don't work. Some things do, and then we build on that. So just start something and try something.
There are so many things that were said there that I number one, agree with, but would really double down on. And when you say know where your audience is, so if you're overwhelmed by just all the avenues and distribution channels, whether it's social media, you mentioned the steak dinners, the mailers, I mean, you find what works for you and you go do that. And when you think about your audience, you can be consistent with hitting that approach, right? Because I'll agree, 80, 90% of what I put out stinks. It's the 10 to 20% that you make that works that gives you the encouragement to keep going. I love that. Kendra, you're going to have to, tough to follow up with these two here on this question. What do you got for us?
So I'm going to go a totally different direction.
Good.
Just to give a different perspective. So I feel like the number one thing that you need to be doing in 2023 is less things better.
I like that.
What we feel like is those who are succeeding in financial brands and financial firms are doing everything. But what I know from talking to all of them behind the scenes, the ones who are totally rocking right now, are actually doing a few things, but very well. And what's really interesting about digital, this sounds so simple, but there's actually a lot of strategic thought behind doing a few things well, is that a few years ago, omni-channel was all the rage. Be everywhere all the time. And that's great if you have a budget that is bonkers, but most of us don't. So my thought process is, be a few places and be absolutely exceptional at what you do. The other thing is that with some of the changes in tracking and the fragmentation, there are social media channels today that didn't exist 2 years ago. So people's attention is fragmented. Mm-hmm. And the great thing is that it feels so noisy out there, but the reality is 95% of the people that every single one of us feel like we're competing against for attention won't be there in 2 years. Most people don't last, they're not patient, and they're not consistent. And most of us have more to do besides marketing. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, I would inspire you to ask yourself, what could I stop doing? And what could I be total rock star status at? And go deeper, go faster, and go farther so that you totally stand out in a crowded market. And you're there 2 years from now, and that's where you really start to see that growth.
Now, what I love about that answer, so thank you for that one. What I love about that is the emphasis on doing something that you love to do and want to do. When marketing becomes a chore or a struggle to even care about doing it because it's not something you want to do, you're not gonna do well at it, right? You're gonna abandon it. You're not gonna be consistent at it. That rings so true. We're gonna stick with you for a second here because, I love this aesthetic we got going on because I'm told we maybe come from a rock and roll music background. Have I heard correctly?
I did not grow up in finance, if it isn't obvious, y'all.
All right, so before today, we spoke about how you drew inspiration from looking outside of the wealth management profession. I grew up in this. It's all I really know. I have no other perception of marketing other than wealth management. But you, on the other hand, from the outside, what I would love to know, and I'd love for you to share with our crowd here, is how do you go about and how are you successful in looking at or being inspired by other tribes than just your own industry? What inspiration or what did you bring from where your heart and soul was in rock and roll into, who would have thought, wealth management?
Absolutely. So the first thing you need to know if you want to stand out in a boring industry is you have to stop copying your competitors. The thing I want you to do is teach them how to market. We don't need any more lighthouses on websites. There's enough of those, okay? I know some of you are hurting right now. I'm sorry.
You mean when they're, holding hands, walking on the beach, picking up a sand dollar? That's
right.
Retirement right there.
The second thing I want you to think about is I want you to think about what are the brands that you adore and you love. Think about your favorite alcohol brand, your favorite clothing brand, the company that ships your dog food to your front door. How do they surprise you and delight you? Who did you give your email address to and why? I want you to pay attention to what works on you. And then I want you to ask yourself, how can I take this idea and apply it to my firm or my brand in a compliance-friendly way? And the thing is that with ideas in one industry, they feel normal. But when you take something that is normal in one industry and you transpose it to another industry, it's novel. And I'll give you a perfect example because we're all sitting here at Future Proof. Now, I grew up in rock and roll, not finance, and in rock and roll, there are festival flyers. How many conferences have y'all been to that has a freaking awesome festival flyer? So my rock and roll roots were so jazzed when I see this cool flyer, and I was excited. I'm looking at the list. I'm like, Doug's there, Sam's there. Like, I'm looking down this cool rock and roll flyer. What's interesting is I've spoke at and attended many conferences. Do you know how many conferences I have shared their speaker agenda? 0.
None.
None. And this strategy of borrowing from other industries and applying it to finance, it can show up in little ways like the wealth poster. But here's what's really cool. I shared that simple poster, this graphic, that's a festival flyer, on my social media. Now, I did not sell out Future Proof. I'm sure that doesn't surprise you. I am not that cool on the internet. But here's what I did do. I shared it, and I got a handful of clients, of prospects, and a lot of my followers are in finance. And they said, hey, Kendra, this looks freaking cool. Should I go? Of course, I'm going to be there. I would love for you to come. I've heard it's amazing. That is what taking a normal idea in the music festival world and applying it to finance can look like. Small, little ways, but also large ways. So just use other industries for inspiration and ask, how can I apply this?
I love that. Sticking with the theme of things that are unique to our panelists up here, we're going to work it back the other way. Gary, CMO of the year. I'm going to keep saying that. You deserve it. Things are done a little differently at Mercer. It's done in the industry, but what separates, I guess, advisors or ensemble practices and RIAs who have their advisors go out and pretty much lead their own marketing efforts, you have a centralized marketing team effort. You take care of that for them. So what I'd love for you to do is give that spin, how you can apply what you've learned in doing that to all advisors and what's effective. What's different about that? What can be applied? Bring us through that. Tell us how your unique approach can be shared with the folks in the crowd who are looking to expand their marketing efforts.
Yeah, happy to. First of all, I completely agree with everything you say. And I think this is how they pick the seating arrangements, because I didn't grow up in the wealth management industry either. So I've got 2 years in now.
It's just me.
But it was just you. But it is interesting. But as I was talking to Dave Welling about coming to Mercer Advisors, one of the things I talked about was the sameness of marketing. And there are a lot of lighthouses and boats, and Mercer Advisors was guilty of this too. And we rebranded in January, and the rebrand was really about finding the why. Because what we do every day is we make people's dreams come true. And on our website, it's because money without purpose is just paper. And when Jamie was speaking earlier, he talked about the why. So we think about, I'm going to get to your question, don't worry, I'm not going to ramble on too long.
You're good, you're good.
But when we think about Mercer Advisors, we think about our why and our how, which is why we exist and how we're different. So we exist so that our clients don't have to worry about money. We call that economic freedom. How are we different? And there's a handful of things that I think makes us different. Only then do we get into the what. And I think that a lot of folks in this industry are guilty of getting to the what first. You go to the site, it's financial planning, it's maybe estate or maybe tax, but why should I work with you? Like, what is my money for? And I think that that's really important. I think being very intentional about that and asking the very difficult questions and the very deep questions help people get to the why. And it may be that they're not the right fit for Mercer Advisors, but it may be that they are, and we've helped them understand their why, which ultimately makes the journey to what they want to achieve easier. Now, in terms of the marketing itself, what we do at the corporate level is no different than anything that any advisor can do at the personal level. Right. Again, I think this gets back to what I mentioned earlier. Is what do you want to try? What do you want to do? Like, do you want to put a few $1,000s into social or paid search? You can do that. But again, the most important thing is, what are your KPI? What are you measuring? What does success look like? And really, I mean, Sam spoke about this. Measure and measure and measure, and then optimize and optimize and optimize. So what's your cost per lead? What's your cost per acquisition? What's your revenue dollar spent for AUM? There are a million different ways you can measure success. Just pick one, stick to it, and test and see if you can get there, and then optimize, test, learn, optimize, et cetera.
I love that. And Sam, I want to kick it over to you here.
Yeah.
Broad question, but look, there's so many ways that you can approach marketing in your practice. What do you see your advisors do, or rather, what do you think is the best way to get started here? Is it really about where you are and what you do, or is there a specific thing where, for me, it was about the website. Give an example here. I figured if I'm going to get people to find me, I needed to focus specifically on the one place that they're going to land. Is that true? Walk me through that.
Yeah, so I think the answer for me is really it's less about the tactics and the channels and more about your why. What's the change you're trying to create and who are you trying to create it for? And actually, I'll share a short story a little bit about my background. I actually also did not grow up in wealth management. I started my career in the advertising agency world, and one of my favorite clients was South Dakota Tourism. Okay, South Dakota. Who all's been there? Okay, maybe not that many people, okay? It's kind of hard to get to, right? Like, it's in the middle of nowhere, but it's beautiful. So our job was to convince people to come travel very far to this tiny airport, see the Black Hills, see Mount Rushmore, and it was hard. It was a difficult task. One of the things that we did, it was one of my favorite campaigns, is we took something that made South Dakota really unique, buffalo. Something that not a lot of people that are city goers see every day, right?
Delicious.
We took those, yes, they are. We took them and we stampeded them down Michigan Avenue in Chicago. And it created a huge buzz, not only on social media, but it did increase, because we're tracking and measuring everything, the number of visitors coming to the Black Hills from the Chicago metro area. And so what I would say to financial advisors is you need to find your buffalo. So what is it that makes you unique? And I think that you can find that answer by starting with your clients. So if you have clients that are, they're really into one certain thing. I worked with a financial advisor once that almost their entire client base was into equestrian show jumping. Really specific. But they were into equestrian show jumping, so they had that mutual connection. They worked with maybe only VP and above at Amazon, and they're based in Seattle. And so look at that. Look at where they're spending their time, and then what they uniquely want to connect with you on, and then use that to kind of drive where you're going to show up and how you're going to show up and what you're going to spend. And of course, track everything. But when you really kind of get down to it, it's all about that unique perspective that you're providing. And that's really the best place to start.
I really like that. And again, it emphasizes the fact that you need to know not just your clients and what they're into. So segmentation, right? Taking a look at your clientele, understanding what are the common themes and denominators. Did they, are there 20 folks that went to the same school? Are you going to go hook them up? It's the beginning of football season. Well, why not go get them some cool tailgate gear or something like that, right?
Absolutely.
It could be client appreciation efforts. It doesn't necessarily need to be, hey, I got to SEO optimize my website for that, right? And think you need to play the internet side of the game, when really staring you in the face the whole time was, let's just provide a nice gift. I like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
I like that a lot. All right, keeping things going here. So now we're all playing the game. We're working our way down the funnel. We went macro, we went large, we opened up the top end. Now we're working our way down. People are paying attention. They're starting to engage. So how do we pull this thing off, right? How do we take the attention we're getting, right? That traction, and how do we actually now convert that to the client that we want? Are there tactics that we should be thinking about? This is the bottom of the funnel, for all of you wondering. Here we are at the bottom now. What should our expectations be from getting the attention, getting the traffic, seeing those measurements? How do we convert? And we'll just go right back down the line.
Okay, you hear from me again right away.
Yes.
What I would think when I think about conversion and the decision phase is you really have to have a lot of respect for what you're asking for. You're asking for their time, arguably the most valuable commodity of all. And then after you have that initial consultation, you're asking them to make a really big decision. And so I think the biggest thing is to first understand that a lot of these client decisions take the most time in the consideration and decision phase. They might interact with your content 10, 20, 30 times before they're ready to sit down with the consultation. So as an advisor, what really matters is positioning yourself as a steady, reliable source of valuable, so keyword valuable information. So take everything that you do. I mean, you're an expert in your field. Sprinkle it with what makes you unique, your Buffalo, and make sure that you are getting it out there in a meaningful way on the channels that your audience is hanging out on already, and they will steadily move towards decision. Now, when it comes to decision, there's a lot of ways that you can convert. Obviously, as a digital marketer, my go-to tactic is to take a really valuable piece of content, a marquee content piece, if you will, whether it be an online course or a webinar or an ebook, and then gate it, or even gate your consultation. I mean, but have them have they need to set up time with you to access this content, to access this event, to interact with you in a more meaningful way. It's important to show what that next step is for them, and then, of course, give them something that makes that trade of time totally worth it.
I like that. So if I could synthesize that a little bit, showing them the track that they're going to go down, right? That lends itself to transparency. They are giving you their time, and they would like to know, okay, how am I about to spend all of this time with this particular individual so I don't squander it or waste it?
100%.
I love that. You wouldn't be Chief Marketing Officer of the Year. Okay, that's the last time I'll do that. If you weren't...
I should have bet the under.
Yeah. If you weren't converting for the organization and the advisors, give us the sweet juice. What's how you making it happen?
Okay.
How do I get this award?
So first things first, there's no one size fits all, right? And so I think to Sam's point, you have to be respectful and understand the channel that they came in on, that your lead came in on. You have to think about things like speed to contact. And so I'm going to be very kind of tactical in my answer here, because there's a very clear playbook that you can use, that one can use once somebody is in your buy flow. And I can't tell you what that is. You'll know better than I do. But for us, if you come in through our website, we want to contact you within 5 minutes. We want to qualify you. We want to get you to an RVP within a day, whatever it is. If you come to a seminar and you show interest, you come to a meeting within 10 business days. So I can't be prescriptive for everybody. I guess my point is, no one size fits all. Understand where your leads are coming from, and then create marketing plans and content plans. And also, hopefully you have a CRM that can actually fulfill on this, as opposed to you just sending out emails all day. And have something that can actually automate your responses to them and have them just keep getting more and more engaged through every step of your communications.
So you said the S word, systems, right? So I think when we talk to our clients about automating their investments, the same rules apply to us when we're thinking about growing. They're trying to grow their net worth, and we're trying to do that for them. We're trying to grow our practices and our net worth too, right? By virtue of doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can't just do that ad hoc, right? You can't spray fire that. You got to have a system. So I love that you brought that up. Kendra, bring us home on this one. How do we get these conversions? How do we turn these leads into money?
All right, first, we got to get to the bottom of the funnel, y'all. And one of the things that I do not see you guys doing enough, it terrifies me, is that you are not incorporating email as a backbone part of your strategy. And here's why. It's a little bit more, when we look at a digital strategy, the easiest way to get attention is to go where attention is. And that looks like LinkedIn, YouTube, your podcast, these different platforms. It doesn't matter which platform it is. What you need to understand is that's the easiest place to get eyeballs, because that's where they're at. The problem is we don't own that attention. And if you're on one of these big platforms and you spend 2 years building a massive following, and then big tech or Zuck gets grumpy, your lead flow's gone. So what the best advisors are doing are choosing a few channels they want to go from average to absolutely awesome at. They are gaining attention, and then they understand that I need to move that attention and that prospect and that lead to a platform that I own. And that platform needs to be email, because you own it. And here's the thing that's really interesting. Social media platforms change. People quit Facebook, they quit Instagram, they quit Twitter when Musk gets a little unhinged. They're fleeting, and that's fine. The thing is that people don't quit email. They just don't. And the reality is that getting someone's email address is harder than it's ever been, because we're smarter than we've ever been. We know that we don't want to give our email to just anybody. And I do this for a living, and it's one of the hardest things we do, which is take that attention from a different platform and gracefully move it somewhere else that we own, that we can more accurately control, track, and measure. And then we use email to move them further down the funnel in a more graceful, natural way. All my clients that are booking the most calls, they use email and they take it seriously, but it is hard, so I don't want to say that it's easy. It's very challenging, but it's an important part of your bottom of funnel strategy.
I can't stress how important that is right there, and how easy. I know you said it's hard, but there are some tactics that are easy or make your life easy when it comes to getting those emails. If you have a website and you don't have a pop-up, a gated piece of content, or some offering, it could be a cheat sheet, it could be the ability to book an appointment where you get that email ahead of time. There are 1,000 ways to do that, and you gain that email. Hey, I promise I won't spam you, but if you put in your email address, I'm gonna give you this guide. I'm gonna give you access to a newsletter, actual thought leadership. I cannot tell you how beneficial this has been to my colleagues, to your advisors, to anyone looking to have that forever list, that forever marketing piece. Absolutely love that piece of advice. I think that's a brilliant tactic. All right, we still have about 11 minutes here to go. This wasn't a bullet point I had in my notes, but we're gonna do it, okay? When we think about money, all right, we've converted leads now. We've made it through the funnel, guys. Congratulations. Your practices are growing. You have clients. Your pipeline is full and robust. Now you need to hire other advisors and administrative staff. You get another really good problem on your hands here. But let's talk about spend. Let's talk about money, right? We often think that in order to be successful with marketing, we have to do some marketing spend. Now, I would argue that's not always true. And I'd love to hear from you guys where the best dollar is invested and where you can strengthen your marketing efforts without there being any spend whatsoever. So a couple minutes out of everyone, that should bring us home. Where are we spending our money? Do we need to spend our money? And what are we doing that on? And if you need a minute to think, that's okay. Gary's got it.
Out of order.
Now we're out of order. Yeah, start with
I'm out of order. You're out of order. There's a lot of ways to generate earned media, right? That's essentially what you're talking about. And so I think we need to be a little realistic too. When you say no spend, it's no spend on marketing, right?
Yeah.
But I'm gonna kind of riff on what Kendra is saying a little bit here. The idea of generating content that then you put into the universe, either through your social channels or through PR or through other your site, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Those are all ways people know about you, and those are all ways to generate earned media that you haven't really spent any money on, right? And so that is not something you do by happenstance. That is a strategy. So what is your content strategy? Who are you trying to reach with your content? I feel like a bit of a broken record, right? Which is, you don't just put content into the universe to put content into the universe. When I first got to Mercer Advisors, I was told the content on the site that was generating the most visitors was like 529 versus something else. And I was like, do any of those people become leads?
No.
No. And are we selling advertising on merceradvisors.com? No. So I said, well, so like, what's the purpose of what we're trying to do? What is the goal? What is the metric? Is it time on site? Is it lead generation? It can be a lot of things. Not everybody comes to your site to become a lead right away, right? But they should stay on your site longer. They should be repeat visitors. They should have a flow through the site. So it's a long way of saying, understand what you're trying to achieve, create a content strategy around it, distribute your content through multiple channels. This is the idea that Kendra talked about with diversification of your channels. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And now to marry what Sam said, measure, 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 and then start doubling down on the content that's working, that's delivering the business outcomes that you're actually trying to achieve.
I love it. Kendra, anything to add?
I think where you spend your money, I would ask myself, where do I have an unfair advantage? So if you can speak well, video might be a great strategy for you because it's a harder barrier to entry. If you can write well, then go to the platforms that really cater to that. So I would look for, where do I have an unfair advantage? The other question I might ask myself is, where am I already winning? In digital, we're so excited to get sexy. Let's do a new thing. And that's great. That's really fun. But what most people don't talk about is when you do this for a living, when you're winning once, double down, triple down, quadruple down, because it is so hard to win in this space without consistency and patience. And so if you're already winning somewhere, I would dump everything into that, and I would measure it. But I would be more intentional, and I would be more thoughtful. And this could be something as simple as like, hey, most advisors, their referrals rock. That's like their #1 lead source. But I don't think they really rock it the way they could. Like, go out there, and how do you become a total badass gift giver to your clients? How can you create something that you like surprise and delight them? And ask them, like, hey, what do you think is totally magical about working with me? I would ask every single client you have, and then I would ask myself, how do I get 1% better at that every day? And I would pour my money into that. We want to do more, but how do we do less better? Because focus is the ultimate competitive advantage.
That was a killer answer. Sam, what you got?
I don't know how I can add.
Yeah, that's tough.
I mean, I agree with both of you, obviously. I think it's really important to have a really good picture of your media mix. You've got owned, you've got earned, you've got paid. And if you truly are not ready to, get into the paid space yet, you're looking at how can you make, kind of strategic bets on the places where you're owning. So your website, your content, if you're doing video, if you're doing social, podcasts, staying up to date with the best ways to leverage those technologies because it is changing. We just had someone up here talking about AI.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk later this week with all of the Carson Group partners about how our websites are now optimized for Google Bart and Bing Chat, which is really important to keep in mind. So making sure that it's not a set and a forget. If you're going to invest in one of those platforms, be invested. Be on there actively. Be up to date with the best ways to utilize the platform and how your audience is interacting. And I know I sound like a broken record, but using analytics is the best way to make a strategic bet. So if you know you have one place where you're having the most conversions, you're already having success, I'd say that's probably the best place to start with an investment. But I think you also want to, keep in mind what type of investment you're looking to make. Can you start small and scale? There are some platforms that are built that way, and there are some platforms that to even get in, you really have to have a large investment. So being really honest with what your budget is and what your goals are, and also keeping that conversion in mind. What is the return on investment that you're looking to get, and kind of backing everything out from there with how much you need to spend to get there.
These have all been amazing answers about how to get started and what tactics are worth spending your money on or not. And that's something I also want to point out. There are a lot of things you can do without spending a dime that can bolster your marketing efforts. And in my experience, that has been, just a big win. It costs nothing but your time to start that Substack or join Beehive and get your newsletter going if you're a strong writer. You don't need to buy the $2,000 camera. You got a smartphone right here with a pretty awesome camera. You can start making video content and get consistent at doing that. None of these things cost a dime. Google Analytics doesn't cost any money. Most of the social media platforms out there do not cost money. That's right. So we have a few questions that we can get through while we still have some time here. And as I'm looking at them, I'm going to pluck one right here. All right, let's go with this one. This is from Athena. What is your most recommended strategy for advisory firms that you can give us today? We touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to hold it to you. Give me one. No wishy-washiness. Give me your number one.
I would go borrow other people's audiences.
Audience hijacking. It's a real thing. In SEO, there's actual keyword hijacking.
Well,
this is
so
a
for
legit
example,
strategy.
most people think I need to start a podcast. And I think that can be a great answer. There's a lot of things that come about whether or not you should start a podcast. But you could also be an amazing guest on podcasts. And it's a little bit of a guerrilla strategy. It takes a little work to get on them for sure. But what you want to think about is like, if other people aren't willing to do it, I should probably check it out. Because the things that people are willing to do, which is blast, social media content without thinking, like everybody's doing that. But very few people are asking, who's already got an awesome freaking audience that I could bring some true value to? So I would just think about that. If you've got your own podcast too, like I would be like, who can I swap podcast interviews with? If you're already huge on Twitter or email lists, hey, how can I partner up with somebody who's 2 steps ahead of me or 2 steps behind me, or close to where I'm at, where we can both beneficially contribute and get something out of this. You don't have to go find and build the audience. You can borrow it.
Don't recreate or reinvent the wheel, is what you're saying. Or the audience, in this case, our metaphorical wheel. All right, I'm going to go through these questions because people are kind enough to ask them. Gary, do you have a favorite CRM tool? What do you guys use? We're going tech now.
We are a Salesforce shop.
Okay. The big guns.
Yeah, we use Marketing Cloud as well, and we use Salesforce. I think it's called Elements on the sales side. So, but again, I think the answer to this question is, what are your needs, right? Because you are going to get sold a $100,000 car when you just may need a $30,000 car to get you to work. And don't really look at the shiny toy and think, yes, I need every one of those. Every functionality that they're selling, you likely don't. I mean, I can't think of anybody who uses more than 50% of any CRM's functionality. So
Agreed.
Really look deeply at what you're trying to use your CRM for, and then find the CRM that fits best, which is really, unfortunately, doing the due diligence yourself. I mean, when we were thinking about changing, and we interviewed 3 other firms, and we ended up going with Marketing Cloud again because we felt that was best for what we needed. But it may not be best for what anybody else in the audience needs. So it's such a personal decision, but
right.
You really have to make it so.
Shop it around. All right, we're going to bring it home. Sam, you want to do that? I got
Of course.
one question here, and then so in 60 seconds, let's get, and then I got a quick question at the end. Oh, a new one just popped up. I'm going to go with this one right here, and it's a hot take, I think. Are advisors too obsessed with marketing? Could we be, this is a marketing panel, the answer is no. Could we be focused on the wrong things? Should we, I get the spirit of this question, right? Is it all about marketing, or is it about great client service or great ops or things like that?
I think the answer is you don't have to choose. I mean, right. I think that if you are truly looking at a full funnel marketing approach, the funnel doesn't end at decision. I mean, that's really where you start looking at when someone converts. How do you provide that excellent client experience? How do you turn them into fans? And then they are fans that turn into marketing for you. So
referrals.
Yes, thank you for the new referrals, but also the new marketing rule. We can now use testimonials.
Yes.
So, there's a lot of different ways that marketing is so core to your business that are they too obsessed? I don't think so. Obviously, I'm a marketer. Could they be more obsessed? Probably not. I think that right now we're at a good balance. I think it's really important to keep in mind that when you're looking at your marketing, stay focused on what works. You don't have to jump to the next shiny thing. I know we've mentioned podcasts a lot. I get asked about podcasts all the time, and it's a great platform. But don't be on podcasts just to check a box. Don't be on Facebook, Twitter, or X, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of the different just to check boxes. Be really intentional when you show up in a great way, and then always measure and optimize. And then once you're ready to expand in a new channel, do it and use what you've learned from the other channels.
Amazing. Last but not least, this question is, who's your favorite financial Twitter account, and why is it Douglas Boneparth? No, I'm just kidding. A big round of applause for everybody up here.
It's like no one asked that.
No one asked that. Thank you all for listening to this amazing panel. Gary, Kendra, Samantha, thanks for listening, guys. We really appreciate you here in the crowd.